Jace Wilson was an average 14-year-old boy when his life spiraled into turmoil. An innocent trip to a diving spring deep in the woods turned into pure horror as Jace witnessed two men brutally murder a police officer. Now Jace has been put into the witness protection program, but the killers are extremely persistent. Jace is sent completely off the grid and is put under the watchful eye of Ethan Serbin, a former SEER instructor and wilderness survival expert. However, the killers, known as the Blackwell brothers, are hot on Jace's trail, and deep in the mountains of Montana, there is very little help, and a rampaging forest fire threatens to burn everything to cinders. Those Who Wish Me Dead is another thriller by Michael Kurita, published in 2014. While the plot is very simple, it's largely a chase through the woods, Kurita delves deep into the technical know-how of wilderness survival and firefighting. I don't know if the information he writes about is accurate, but it certainly comes off like it is. Additionally, this was another audiobook, narrated by the immaculate Robert Petkoff, who is once more in top shape. Jace is young and understandably nervous about his situation. However, he pays attention to the survival lessons and learns several tricks that help him evade trouble. His cover story is that he's a troubled teen joining other troubled teens in one of those wilderness camps to get some discipline into them. Jace could have easily been whiny and annoying, but he has this determined grit about him, and it's easy to find yourself rooting for him. Despite his fear, Jace is set to stay alive no matter what, even if that means setting off into the mountains on his own. Ethan was raised in a military family and joined the Air Force to be an instructor. He comes off as strict and militaristic, but that's appropriate considering the kids he's escorting. For those that don't know, SEER, the program that he taught in the military, stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. It's a high-level survival training for worst-case scenarios and is one of the hardest challenges to overcome in the US military. And we do get to read about Ethan using some of his training in the book. He doesn't go full-on Rambo or anything, but what we get is good. Despite his tough exterior, he's a caring, compassionate man and lives with his wife on their horse ranch. Ethan is exactly the kind of guy you would want to come find you if you were lost in the middle of nowhere. Also important is Hannah Faber. She starts the book as a former extreme firefighter, the ones who would go directly to the front lines of a mountain fire. She's struggling after losing her fiancé and squad leader to a forest fire after she convinced him to break protocol, and he died after boiling alive in a river. She has a new job as a fire watcher, responsible for reporting fires as soon as they form. When the mountains catch fire, she's the expert in navigating away from the flames and protecting others as they traverse the burning trails. However, that expertise becomes vital for Jace's survival later on. But what would a good murder thriller be without strong antagonists? Well, sadly, it would be this book. Don't get me wrong, the Blackwell brothers aren't exactly badly written, but they come off as a little cartoonish, especially when compared to everyone else. A lot of this was due to the audiobook's narration, which portrays the brothers talking in low, matching tones. They talk like no one else is around them, like they share some bizarre hive mind, and every time they were together, I was reminded of the kids next door's enemies, the delightful children from down the lane. Yeah, it made it hard to take them seriously because of that. It also didn't help that while these two would carry on during tense interrogation scenes, other characters would just hang back and let them prattle on and on and on. Their dialogue felt staged and really took me out of the moment. That's not to say these two are devoid of character, mind you. They're sinister and willing to do terrible things to get what they want. At one point, they cut through a man's arm by using a chainsaw blade like a garrote wire. They're not the best villains, but they work well enough for the story. The writing style is generally pretty strong, setting up the world and characters well, and following through with a gripping pace. However, while he did use some repetition, Kurita kind of overdid it this time around. It's a little distracting, especially with the narration, when Kurita just repeats himself the same way. He'll try to give emphasis by saying something like, "He was tired, so tired." And while that gets the job done, the technique gets stale after 24 times. Combine that with the Blackwell brothers' convenient dialogue, and the writing as a whole comes off a little weak. What does work well is narrator Robert Petkoff returning once more for another of Kurita's books. However, this is a good example of acting versus writing. While Petkoff does a good job giving characters different voices and setting the scene, the writing isn't as good as So Cold the River, Kurita's other audiobook that I've reviewed, so Petkoff doesn't have as much to work with. Also, we discover that Petkoff does have a limit in his delivery. During the book, some characters need to shout over a storm at each other, and Petkov can only speak in that hushed yelling thing. So his voices come off like this! It's kind of weird, and again, I'm taken out of the moment! Not that I fault Petkov for that, mind you. I imagine actually yelling wasn't even an option in the recording studio. Overall, the audiobook for Those That Wish Me Dead is pretty good. Not a bad time to be had, for sure. The plot is basic, and the villains are kind of off, but the other characters are fun, and Petkov has more than enough talent to carry the listener through to the end. I swear, if that man launches a Christmas album, I'll buy it. So, have you read the book? What did you think? If not, do you want to read it now? Whatever your thoughts, comment below and stay tuned for more.